Sanitation District regular meeting of September 21st, 2017 at 5:33 p.m. Mr. Tate, would you please call the roll?
Director Marshall.
Present.
Director Sakowitz. Absent. Director McNerlin.
Present.
Chairman Ronco.
Present.
Vice Chairman Page. Absent.
All right, we're going to move on with the items on the agenda, which is item number 2, public expression of non-agendized items. The board welcomes participation in board meetings. Comments shall be limited so that everyone may be heard. This item is limited to matters under the jurisdiction of the board which are not on the posted agenda and items which have not already been considered by the board. The board limits testimony on matters not on the agenda to 3 minutes per person and not more than 10 minutes for a particular subject at the discretion of the chair of the board. No actions will be taken. Anyone wishing to speak must come to the podium and state their name for the record. Individuals wishing to address the board under the public expression on agendized items may do so when the item is addressed by the board. Any members of the public wishing to come forward?
Yeah, hi, Sean White, City of Ukiah. I'm just here to let you know that last night, City Council met in closed session, and then again this morning. And as a result, they sent a letter to the district and all of its board members urging you to consider ending the lawsuit and resolve any ongoing disputes outside of litigation. Otherwise, both entities are going to be essentially forced to prepare for pending litigation with a court date in March that will significantly increase costs to both parties. And if you have not received a copy of the letter, I have one here for anyone who doesn't have it. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. White. Any other members of the public wishing to come forward?
Good evening. My name's Lee Howard, 3900 Parichi Road. I also own other properties around. I haven't been around the Sand District for a while. I haven't even spoken to anybody since Mr. Michaels left. But yesterday I had the privilege of attending the City of Ukiah's City Council meeting and listened for 1 hour of the bashing of the Sand District. I wanted to come here and make sure that you all didn't grow horns since I seen you last time, because that was pretty much the case that I heard last night. How you don't do this, you don't do that. I wanted to make sure you even had agendas here tonight. And you do, so I guess you know that. And it's got a financial statement in it. I understood last night you don't do financial statements. But I do something when I come to meetings, and especially under public expression, that not many people do. I ask for a public records request, and I'm going to do that tonight of you. I want your last 6 months of your agendas, your minutes, and your financials. I want to see if you can really provide them. So I'll be looking for that in the next 10 days, and if you can't produce it in 10 days, I'll give you another 14. But, you know, I heard the rhetoric last night. I saw the agenda item come very first at the first of the meeting, and for 1 hour we spent time listening to the city bash, and then tonight come and say, God, we want to settle. And you know, I go back probably further than anybody here for sure with the Sand District. I can show you minutes 30 years old from the Sand District, and I followed it, but I haven't been totally engrossed in it or involved in it. Until the other day when I arrived at home and found a car parked in my driveway with a server waiting to serve a subpoena on me by the City of Ukiah for depositions. So I am a player now, and I'm not going to stand around here and listen and fight. I'll be anxious to read your minutes and the rest of your stuff, and I thank you for the opportunity. And, you know, to be bullied, none of us like. And sometimes in this Ukiah Valley, that can happen. And I'll be interested in watching and seeing what goes on here. Here's my card. please, if you give it to me by email, and thank you.
Thank you, Lee.
Hey, Joe,
Any other members of the public wishing to make a comment?
is our website working?
Seeing no one else come forward, we will close the public expression on non-agendized items. We will move to item number 3, the consent calendar. The consent calendar portion of the agenda contains items of district business that are considered routine and non-controversial. The board will take action on the consent calendar items with one motion without discussion unless a director of the board requests that the item be moved from the consent calendar for discussion and individual consideration, or a member of the public may ask for the same. Any members of the board wishing to have an item moved from the consent calendar for further consideration? Any members of the public? Chair would consider a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Members of the public having any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none. Motion carries. Consent calendar is approved. Item number 4, approval of the board meeting minutes for the August 17th, 2017 regular meeting and August 24th, 2017 meeting. Any members of the board having any additions, corrections, spelling changes?
Move to approve.
No, I just, coming in late that one meeting, I wonder if I'm still allowed to second and make a motion, correct?
Yes. I read the minutes.
So, I make a motion that we accept the minutes as drawn.
Second.
Any members of the public requesting to make public comment?
Yes, staff notes and.
Please, as you've been asked, move to the podium and identify yourself.
Sure. You have items in item 8 that are notes to staff that you may want to amend before you adopt it. That's all.
Item number 8.
At the bottom, in Karen's,
Oh,
I think it was item 8.
Meeting was adjourned at 7:15.
No, it's a note about legal items. I thought it was item 8, it may be another item. It's the
Oh,
bottom.
I'm sorry, I was reading it, yeah.
Adjournment?
That's what I was reading.
I don't have a packet in front of me.
Yeah, I don't see what you're talking about. Item 8 says adjournment, the meeting was.
Yeah, I don't think it's item
7.
7.
Can you help me with this? Some of this legal stuff confuses me.
Yeah, you
Okay.
probably don't want that in there.
Probably want to correct that. You need a motion to amend that.
Where is,
Yeah, it's item 7 on the second page, third page. Nope, second. All right.
that's not on there.
So we need a motion?
It is.
To amend the motion to approve the minutes with these last
This
sentence
one out.
of resolution of item number 7, for the minutes August 17th be redacted.
So make a motion or something?
That's the motion we need.
Only for
Then I make a motion that the last sentence out of item number 7 be redacted from the minutes.
Second of the motion.
But, I'm not. I don't have that on mine.
Yeah, me either.
Okay, what was the published agenda? What do you have on the published agenda?
I pulled mine off of the email.
I have August 17th.
No, I mean, that doesn't have all these facts.
It was,
It was redacted.
it's not on my list.
Mine
But I
either.
It must have been on the
just
email.
Yeah, it's not on mine either.
It was in the email that I received, yeah.
got- So they've been corrected since the email.
I believe what you
It's done.
received was a draft.
Already done.
Email,
I withdraw my
It's not on
motion.
mine.
and,
I think it was already redacted, though.
yes, I think it was too.
It was.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
It was
No.
corrected on the official,
Motion carried.
that was posted.
This afternoon, the Sanitation District received a letter from the City of Ukiah requesting that the Sanitation District enter into a settlement discussion and dismiss the lawsuit. For that reason, we have moved closed session up on the agenda to follow on item number 4, which we just heard. Mr. James, do you have comment regarding the letter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for providing me a copy of this letter late this afternoon after I returned from Petaluma, where I was meeting with one of our expert witnesses in this case. I would like to just go through and make a couple of corrections and then basically advise the public what's going on, because unfortunately the public doesn't know maybe everything going on in the case. In the first paragraph of the letter, that is signed by, Teresa doesn't have a copy of the letter.
What else do
Signed by each member of the city council and no city staff. I presume there is an innocent mistake, for lack of a better term, in the middle of the first paragraph where it reads in part, at that time, the city council noted that the district's lawsuit was costing a fortune in legal fees and other litigation expenses, and was having other adverse financial impacts on both parties, including preventing the city from refinancing $75 million in wastewater treatment plant bonds at a lower interest rate and a savings of millions of dollars for city and district taxpayers, unquote. That's the second sentence in the first paragraph. And that is in reference to September 14th of 2016. On July 15th of 2016 at 3:12 p.m., an email was sent from Sage San Giacomo to Robert Gamble, CC to Dave Rapport, Sean White, Tim Erickson. In the third paragraph of that letter that began, "Hi Bob," it is said, quote, "If they are successful with the legal action, our ability to collect and pay back the debt would be significantly compromised, period. Under these circumstances, it seems to me it may be difficult to get underwriting unless the district was willing to drop that portion of the lawsuit and agree to the refunding efforts, period. Additional thoughts, ? Unquote. For those that might try to be taking notes, there's copies of this particular email are available to you here. That was in response to an email dated July 12, 2016 from Robert Gamble to Sage San Giacomo. The subject was refunding scenarios. In the third sentence of that email to Mr. San Giacomo, it says, "The existence of the litigation was already acknowledged in Moody's report. If the JPA approved the documents for the refunding, you could proceed with it regardless. I can't see from our documents who are the members of the JPA, but if there's only one member opposed, based on the litigation, then presumably the refunding could still be approved." Next paragraph. "This may remove the incentive to settle the litigation you were hoping for, but it would allow the capture of substantial savings nonetheless," unquote. So, the letter I referred to in the sentence I referred to in the letter of September 20th had to do with the refinancing of the $75 million bond, which was a basis of the upgrade rehabilitation program that was completed in late 2008. And so the questions obviously were, can we get refinancing? And Mr. Gamble responded to Mr. San Giacomo saying yes, which is inconsistent with what is said in the letter dated September 21, 2017 to this board. So I can only presume that was a mistake on the city council's part. Secondly, you've asked me to address another part of this letter. And it's the first sentence in the last paragraph. Quote, in a recent press release, the district states, comma, quote, first and foremost, the district wants to settle the lawsuit through mediation, comma, on terms that will benefit both the district and city taxpayers, unquote. As to that statement, I am not sure if the public is truly knowledgeable about what's going on in the case, so that's what I'm going to tell you. The last mediation took place on August 14th of this year in Sonoma County in Santa Rosa with the Honorable Ron Sabraw, retired judge, former presiding judge of Alameda County. As a result of that mediation, a document was prepared and signed by Mr. Poor and myself, which resulted in the transfer of approximately $4,544,482 as part of the litigation. The document speaks for itself. Whatever other people may want to characterize it, read the document. Happy to give you copies of it. At the conclusion of that mediation, only attorneys were present. The judge had indicated that he felt that progress in the mediation was being, I don't want to say obstructed, but sort of not going along too well because there were too many personalities on both sides involved. And so he wanted to get down to the nitty-gritty of the entire case. But in saying that, he said that he was going to be on vacation in early September for 2 weeks, and then was going to be in a 6-month jury trial, which meant that we cannot get back to our next mediation session with him being present until probably late October. He suggested, and all the attorneys agreed, that all parties would continue to work toward resolving a variety of issues. Now, these are the little issues that litigants, counsel can get together and work things out, basically. Doesn't need everybody else putting their 2 cents worth in. Because we have to recognize that both the city council and the district board are 5 members apiece, and it takes a majority of those 5 members to come to a conclusion. And so when you only have 2 members of a board or a council present at mediation sessions, they have no rights to make a final decision. Nor does the district manager, nor does the city manager, nor does council. Council being the attorneys. And so it was agreed among all of us that we would continue working towards resolving some of the differences. And we have come a very significant distance without the judge during the last 1 month period of time. Now, the specifics as to what both parties agreed to would be improper for me to say publicly, because what occurs within mediation is confidential. The district board is entitled to know in a closed session, the city council is entitled to know in a closed session. But I can assure you that dramatic improvements have occurred in the positions. And a lot of agreements have been reached during the course of those communications. Now because there's so many lawyers involved, there's so many lawyers because there's so many issues, and you have financial lawyers, and you have contract lawyers. And in this case, the primarily financial lawyers are Pat O'Brien, who is an attorney whose office is in Petaluma, which is where I was today, and Dan Crowley, an attorney who is a construction expert, whose office is in Santa Rosa. And then financial is Lee Bartolotta, who is hired by the insurance company that represents the city of Ukiah. And his fees are paid for by the insurance company. Working with Lee Bartolotta is another attorney, same office, by the name of Ray Fullerton. Now, Mr. Fullerton and Mr. Bartolotta have done, I think, very significant positive work for both sides as it relates to financial. But the other part of it is the district wants to go its own way. And in going on its own way, it's like getting a divorce. You have some minor children and you have to get along because you still have to deal with the minor children so the minor children can grow up. And so mom and dad need to be nice. Well, assuming we reach a conclusion where the city and the district separate, we still have a child. And it's sort of different. Our child is sort of look a little bit different because the city's child is a wastewater treatment plant because the city owns the wastewater treatment plant. The district needs to use the wastewater treatment plant, but we also own a lot of the trunk lines that get this stuff to the wastewater treatment plant. So the issue is, at the end of the day, no matter what happens here, mom and dad have to get along. In other words, the district board and the city council have to get along. So you write an agreement so there's no misunderstandings between the parties. There's none of this manipulation of words. And I'll give you an example of word manipulation in a few minutes. You have to put it down in writing so that when Mr. Bronco asks me a question, I can say, Mr. Bronco, paragraph 4 of the contract says this. If Mr. San Giacomo asks Mr. Rapport the same kind of question or another question about the contract, Mr. Rapport says, this is what the contract says. You try to eliminate ambiguity because ambiguity creates a lot of the problem we have here today. Now, Donald McMullen in my office and Dave Rapport have been working on some of the more general terms in trying to start making the progress towards the discussions. You read the letter from the city council, and I guess they think that we've stopped talking, but I would tell you that at 4:04 p.m. today, Donald received an email message regarding settlement discussions, and, 1:43, settlement discussions from David Rapport. It was CC'd to Mr. Bartolotta and Ray Fullerton. And it talked in that document, which I cannot disclose to you because it's part of the mediation, even though the mediation isn't there. They're talking about some of the terms and addressing, this is what we've got to do, this is what we've got to work on. It's just not magic. You just don't walk into a mediation and say, okay, we agree to A, B, C, D. Unless all you're doing is transferring dollars from one person to another. You've got a very sophisticated business relationship here, which is going to continue one way or the other. And so, Donald, Lee, Dave, and Ray are also working on the written document. So, I challenge anybody to say that mediation is not going on. If you want to have word games and say it's been unsuccessful so far, because the last phrase is, while attempting so far unsuccessfully to mediate its resolution. That's probably a true statement because we haven't reached a conclusion. But you have to walk before you run. And that's what we're doing, both sides. And I think both sides are acting in very good faith within the mediation to try to reach a resolution. So, assuming the mediation continues, I would anticipate in the latter part of October, as soon as the judge finishes his jury trial, we will be back with the mediator to put together everything we've got to so far. And by then, hopefully, things are narrowed down to a small number of issues and we can reach a resolution of it rather quickly. The district doesn't want to spend money on lawyers, whether it be me or other lawyers, and the city doesn't want to spend money on lawyers, even if it's very poor, and not Lee Bartlotta, because Lee Bartlotta is reimbursed by the insurance company. But when we talk about delay and costs, because the city makes it clear that we should have settled this case, we should dismiss this case. I will assure you that 99.99% of all judges will tell you the only way to settle a case, is to have a trial date, never change the trial date, and make everybody go to trial. You know, I see Ernie back there. I know Ernie probably knew Judge Broadus, right? I know Jim did. I don't know about a lot of the other people here, but Judge Broadus was my predecessor as district attorney. When you went into his courtroom and he set a trial date, you never got a change of trial date. Because Judge Broadus always said, the case will never settle until you have to show up in the courtroom. And the reason is because then both sides have to face the reality they may not get what they want. So, I tell you that because Monday of last week, which I think was the 11th, there was what was called a case management conference in Sonoma County. For several hours that day, just to show you what we are really doing, Mr. McMullen, Mr. Bartlotta, and Mr. Rapport met for several hours, working on issues that are presently part of the problem that exists between the city and the district. Okay? They then went into the court on the case management conference. A case management conference is where the judge says, okay, what's going on, guys? What are you doing in discovery? Who's being deposed? He wants to make sure the case is moving forward. He doesn't want just people sitting on their hands. I began to practice the law 50 years ago, and in those days, cases got continued, and everybody complained about the calendars were always backed up and nobody ever got to trial. So the judges took that away from the lawyers a lot by these case management conferences. So what happens at the case management conference? First thing, city wants a continuance. They want a continuance of the case to next fall. We say, we want this case to trial. We want this case to go over. We don't want to keep spending our clients' money. Let's get ready for trial. You, city, have had 4 years. You should be ready for trial. So the judge did not grant their request to postpone the matter. And he continued the case management conference until November to see if everybody had really got some paperwork out on doing depositions. And lo and behold, yesterday we got deposition notices of like 14 people. I didn't know about Lee Howard until today. So I guess the attorneys, I presume it was Lee Bartlotta's office, got out all these deposition notices. And our office also has been working on deposition notices for some period of time, which have gone out. So yeah, everybody's moving forward. So any opinion to the contrary is erroneous and misinformed. And I think there was, and one final thing on that. The finger has always been pointed in the news about how the district is the obstructionist in settlement. As far back as September of 2013, I attempted to get the city to resolve the matter without litigation. I offered at that point to put the case on hold so long as the city signed a tolling agreement. And a tolling agreement says that the statute of limitations will not run on your claims during the tolling period. We believe, we being the district board that existed then, and I believe myself personally at the time, that the case could have been very easily resolved had somebody just talked to us. During that initial period of time, based on a demand that my office made on Dave Rapport, Jane Chambers turned over $2,871,814 to the district that the city was holding on to in what was called a rate stabilization account. That was turned over to the district because of the threat of the lawsuit. During a short time after that, the city denied our claim for $15,990,000. The city never, through their attorney or other representatives, attempted to have any discussion with us to settle the case. And now suddenly, as we're 6 months away from the trial date, they're in a panic mode of some sort and want to settle something they should have settled 5 years ago and didn't. Or 4 years ago it didn't. So I hope that puts that issue to rest, and I doubt it will. So be it. The final thing is, I keep hearing from the city that the money that is coming to us, the 8 million, let's see how much that was. $8,900,000. $8,916,296. The city has paid to us since the lawsuit was filed is not damages. It's just money the city was holding for us. The problem is, where was that money being held? It has taken a great deal of effort on the part of the Pat O'Brien, the financial person, and some of our expert witnesses to locate this money. And I can assure you that very significant additional sums have also been located. But they're not sitting in an account that says this is being held as a reserve for the benefit of the sanitation district. That being said, whether it comes from a reserve or it's characterized as damages, that's a word game. I challenge anybody that wants to read the definition of damage. A damage is an amount of money that one party may recover from another party as a result of a lawsuit. As far back as 2014, this board passed a resolution demanding that the city turn over all of the district funds to the district. The city chose not to do that. It was more than 2 years before we finally got them to turn over $1.5 million to the board as a result of a motion that we filed in the Sonoma County Superior Court to compel them to turn over to us the money. In settlement of that motion, the city agreed to turn over to us $1.5 million out of $7.5 million that at that point we were identifying as belonging to the district. Now, that doesn't sound to me like a response to just ask. Tremendous sums of money were spent on lawyers by the city and by the district to get that money. A just ask didn't work because the just ask began in 2013. So that should give you some of the true background as to what's going on. The district board has never had an objection to me providing that information to any person that wants it. Whether it be a candidate, a current candidate for the district board, or a matter of the public. Because the district board is trying to be as transparent as possible so that the public knows what truly is and has gone on in this case. As to the $1.5 million I just talked about, if you want a copy of the documents which substantiate what I just said to you, because the last thing we want to do is misrepresent a fact to the public. Take a pack. And if you're interested in the communications between Mr. San Giacomo and Mr. Gamble, I brought those for you too. Anything else you want me to say, Mr. Chairman?
Nope. If you're satisfied. We're satisfied, and as indicated previously, we will now go into closed session.
Public comment on that item?
No.
May I comment on the city letter?
We were going to go into closed session.
Can I comment? My comment is, reading through this letter, the reason we are sitting here as an elected board is because a grand jury did an investigation on the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District. And it was not made up of elected members. And so it was a recommendation to have an elected board, and that's why we're here. The only thing on our plate is this district and the ratepayers, which every one of us is a ratepayer. I've been on this board since it was it was established. Mr. Ronco and I. And we don't get paid to sit here. We do it because we have it in our hearts to do the right thing for the people within the district. And when we came here, we had a really hard time with the city getting documents that were ours, getting money that belonged to the ratepayers. Some of the things I noticed in this letter saying that we've been unsuccessful at our, not negotiations, what's the word I'm looking for with the judge? Mediation. We've been unsuccessful. That's not true. We've recuperated almost $9 million of district ratepayers' money only through mediation or threatening of lawsuit. We didn't get anything done prior to that with the city. Secondly, when they said they haven't had time to prepare for this, they've had since November 2013. The city's had just as much time as we have and 10 times more resources as this little tiny district. In the letter, it says that things have changed between the relationship between the district and our board. Well, that hasn't changed. We can look at the last communication I received from the city manager that I was CC'd on, saying, yeah, although it was agreed to that we would give over this money, it was agreed by our attorneys. Unless you ask me in this certain way, you're not getting it from me. Paraphrasing, of course. That's hostile. That was already an agreement made by attorneys, and he came back with hostility. And that was less than 30 days ago. I don't know why they think things have changed on our end. It hasn't changed. There's still revenue that should be going to the district ratepayers that is still going to the city. Still, after years, and they know it. They haven't corrected it. Why? Why? I don't understand why. Another thing is the cost of billing has gone up more than 100% in the last 2 years. But because they control our money, they take it out, whether we've approved it or not, in a budget. Why is billing now contracted outside of our county, outside of our state? I don't know if it's outside of our county, outside of our state. We're paying over 100% more, and we have no say-so as an elected board? That's not right. And that's why we're here, and that's why we're doing this. And I think mediation is it's moving, it's working. And we need to continue with it and settle this through mediation without changing any dates for court.
We're now going to go
Public
to
comment?
session.
Public comment on
No.
that?
We're now going to go to closed session. This was not an agendized item, the public expression has already been ended.
It isn't.
We're going to go to closed session. Okay, we're going to come back out of closed session at 6:59 p.m. And Mr. Tate, would you like to...
6:59 or 49?
6:49, excuse me. Report out of closed session, the action taken by the board.
I think Mr. Losak has
Do you want me to read the motion?
Yeah.
Or you got it?
when you guys got
The
it.
motion was made by Ms. McNairland was to direct our attorneys to actively continue mediation and pursue negotiations for a complete settlement with the city of Ukiah. It was moved by Ms. McNairland, seconded by Director Marshall, and the vote was 3-0.
Thank you. Any members of the public wishing to make comment about the closed section action? Seeing none come forward, we will move on then to item number 5 of the agenda, discussion and possible action regarding district vehicle acquisition. Mr. Tate, would you please lead the discussion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We've been renting a vehicle, as you know, from day one since I got here. There's a, I think, cheaper way to accomplish the same objective for both Chelsea and I, because we kind of share it during the day right now when she runs errands to the county, or I'm running to the law firm, or we're constantly in and out of the office. So my thoughts were to lease a vehicle at a substantial lower rate than what it's costing us to rent the vehicle right now.
Do you have a vehicle in mind?
Haven't gotten that far until the board approves me to do that.
Would there be a preference on the vehicle?
Yeah, it's similar to what Weller's using and Milby's using pickup trucks. And a lot of the things I'm getting involved in now, including some site visits, are off-road. They're off the pavement.
Okay.
So
We definitely do have an awful lot of site visits, and I think that the previous district manager used his own vehicle quite
yeah, it's true.
frequently.
Yeah.
Ms. McNernland?
So I'd like you to maybe ask some of the other districts who do lease vehicles if we could maybe tag on to whatever agreement they have.
It's usually that's a good point. It's usually a state purchase.
Right.
and I'm sure Sean, you guys do it with the city as well, there's usually a state contract. And so you'll see from year to year, it'll be Fords or Chevys or,
Right.
you know, that.
Toyotas or,
And so Willow and Millview both have vehicles here.
Mhm.
During the day, the lot's usually full and the back's full. We'll walk across the hall and ask them what they're doing right now, what their arrangements are, and
Mhm.
see if we can jump on the back of that.
Sure, if I may. Most state contracts, have what's called piggyback provisions, which allow other government entities to piggyback on those contracts with various rental or lease companies, and so that's an option we will definitely look into.
And it's at a significant savings.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
it's,
Teresa's point.
it's it's negotiated statewide, so they get a very great discount on what they're doing.
Yep.
I know the county does that.
And I'm fine with that. Like I said, it's across the hall for me.
Well, I guess what I'm hearing is that the majority of the board believes that this makes some sense and it's worth pursuing. And you know, at this point, any members of the public wishing to make a public comment? Does the board want to give Mr. Tate direction towards pursuing a lease of a vehicle?
you know, want them to investigate it, report back with the cost. Also investigate, if we could purchase, insurance through one of our, state district insurance companies, those companies that have district insurance, you know, see if that's a better rate than just going out independently. So compare a few insurance rates. I'm sure it also depends on the driver and the driver's records, so hopefully you guys are pretty clean on your DMV records. Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion? Then we'll move on to item number 6, discussion and possible action regarding contracting services with John Dickerson to assist with audits and or reconciliations for previous fiscal years. As the board is aware, the district needs to have the previous year's budgets audited and or reconciled. Mr. Tate, you've done some investigation regarding this?
Yes, and I have some comments later on in the agenda as well, but on this item, it's a cleanup item from previous management where Mr. Dickerson has years and years of data that reside in various places, some of it with the district, some of it with him, and it's a cleanup. The board gave me authorization months ago, I can't remember what month it was, June or July, that said, go ahead and move forward with this activity, so I've done that now. I'm bringing it back to the board for consideration. I can't tell you how long it's going to take simply because I don't know how much data and how many years back it goes, but it's fairly significant. And I'll get to a separate part of that discussion later on under my general manager's report, but for this item, that's the purpose of this agenda.
And I see that we have a recommended action, which would be to authorize Mr. Tate to enter into a contract with services with Mr. Dickerson not to exceed $7,500. But before we get to discussing that any further, are there any members of the public wishing to make a comment regarding this budget item?
Mr. Chairman, one more point for the board to understand. Mr. Dickerson does not currently have a contract with the district. So
This is cleanup as well.
it is cleaned up as well.
All right. Board have any discussion regarding this matter?
How long has John been with the board collecting data? Sort of 5-6 years?
Been longer than that. He sent me documents today from 2001 to 2005.
He hadn't been with the board then.
Right, but he had access to documents in his file that were pertinent to our financials back at that time.
So I don't believe that Mr. Dickerson was working with the district prior to 2011.
I believe he came with the transition from Frank to, or from Rick to Frank.
Mm-hmm.
So that would have been 2011, 2012.
So a long time.
Do I have any discussion and or motion?
Sure, I'll make the motion to
Recommended action?
follow the recommended action and give the district manager some authorization to enter into a contract with Mr. Dickerson.
Not to exceed 7,500.
Not to accept, to exceed 7,500.
Second?
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. Authorized to proceed. Item number 7, discussion of possible action regarding contracting for CPA services related to audits and to reconciliations for previous fiscal years has been removed from the budget and will be returning when more information is available.
And specifically, Mr. Chairman, as I get farther down the road with my reconciliation with Mr. Dickerson, I'll have a better idea of what that's going to entail transitioning to a CPA firm. That's why I wanted to pull it.
Okay, so item number 8 is discussion and possible action regarding issuing refunds to district ratepayers. Mr. Tate?
I think, Mr. Chairman, you and I have discussed, along with others, that because the district has received these overcharged amounts and funds from the city, that we institute I don't know if I want to call it a pilot program, but an initial program that would return an initial amount, and I use that word strongly, an initial amount to the ratepayers based on a yet to be determined formula of how long they have been in their property, and we haven't identified a minimum or a maximum yet. That's the purpose of tonight's discussion. I've spoken with Mr. James, Mr. Losak about this, of what that possibly could look like, and make sure we're in the legal bounds of doing so. So this would be our first pass at what that program would look like. So I'm really looking for thoughts tonight from the board as to how we want to structure this.
Mr. Tate and I have discussed this, and I have seen examples of this type of program that have come from other districts where it's been determined that there is an excess of potential revenue that may have been collected and for which the ratepayers will be benefiting by a return of some of the monies that have been collected. I think Coachella Valley
and our district, MWD, both returned money, and the reason we returned it was sometimes at year-end reports, you don't get reports until past new budget time, and so interest income and other revenues that keep coming into the district past adoption of the new budget made us aware that we had extra money. So we decided to return that money to the ratepayers through the districts. And each district was, like ours, up to the board to determine what kind of program you wanted to set up for your own ratepayers. For instance, Coachella Valley is a very dry, arid, hot climate.
For your information, that's down in the desert.
So they have different needs. They have different needs
Not Hawaii.
than some of the coastal districts who had a cooler, moister climate. They had different needs at different times of the year. So instead of us adopting a macro program to force everybody to fit into, we left it up to the districts to individually tailor their own programs, and we simply provided the money return.
I think we have a finance committee made up of Teresa and Ken. And I'm wondering if it wouldn't behoove us for the finance committee to engage with Mr. Tate as to what potential surplus value amounts we have and what would be a reasonable way to return some of that surplus.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask questions, and it'd probably a better form, maybe the committee when I'm on, to ask those questions and find those answers. Like, how would we find out how long somebody has lived in the districts? Is that information we already have? Would we just take their word and fill out, questionnaires?
That's a good question, because in fact, Duncan and I have had that discussion along with Doug. Is let's set a parameter. Let's say a range of they have to have lived in a property for X amount of months. and they don't get paid if they've lived there over X amount of months because our records only go back so far. Now, one of the recommendations Duncan made was they fill out a application, and then they tell us all of that information. And of course, between the city and the district, we have billing histories on all of these people. So here's the application, here's the billing history, okay, we verified it.
Yeah, I just don't want it to cost us,
Sure.
you know,
Yeah.
half of that.
No,
To do
right,
to
right,
return
right.
it.
Well, like I said, the databases already exist,
Yeah.
it's just compiling it.
Right, but I believe it is our ethical and legal obligation to return excess funds to the ratepayers, because we should only be charging what it costs to run our system and nothing more than that.
But there are gonna be a lot of variations. I mean, what do you do with somebody who's moved out of the district recently? I mean, you're gonna feel like they're missing out on so many.
Those are the technicalities and the decisions that the finance committee is gonna come back and make some recommendations.
So, yeah, so can we just get a staff directive to move it to finance, or do we need a motion? Motion or directive?
Well, this is discussion and possible action, so I think that, what we need to be doing is maybe making some sort of direction by motion to appoint the finance committee to work with the district manager to report the feasibility and parameters of how to accomplish some form of rebate.
And we'll bring
So
that back to the
Or
board.
bring it back.
So moved.
So moved.
And, yeah, you only need a second.
Yeah.
Yes.
Second then.
Any members of the public wishing to make a comment? Seeing none, all those in
No,
favor?
no, you have a comment.
I'll be brief. Sean White, City of Ukiah. As you look at any potential refunds, and you have, you need to understand that at least some of that money came from accounts that were a CIP reserve. And that's not something that is accrued annually and spent annually. I would look at the rate study that you adopted in 2011 to see what the actual destiny for those funds were. Lots of times you adopt a rate that intentionally accrues a reserve, so then when you have large capital projects, you actually have the cash to do it. Implementing those projects doesn't mean you have to raise rates to pay for it in real time. So before you look at handing your CIP back, you should just definitely look and see what part of it was built into a rate study, how much it was intended to set aside, and see what is really surplus and what is actually a CIP reserve that should be for the kind of capital projects you're intending on embarking on.
Thank you, Mr. White. I believe that made a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carried. That brings us to item number 9. General Manager's report on ongoing activities, letters received. I think we've already talked about the letters received. And so, Mr. Tate, would you like to give us your General Manager's report?
Sure, I thought I'd turn it into a kind of an overview of 90 days that just passed this week. Kind of an assessment of what I've seen, just an overall view of the first 90 days of what my outsider observations are of the district. Focusing on operating technologies, working relationships throughout Ukiah. So let me start with our ratepayers. Most of our ratepayers, and I think Chelsea has found this out firsthand, most of our ratepayers are not aware of who we are. Okay, that's just a fact of people walking in and asking questions. They don't know how their bills are generated. They don't know the formulas that compile their bills. And they aren't aware that the sanitation district doesn't have a role in billing to their house. Okay, that's just a fact of the last 6 weeks of watching this stream coming into the front door. All they know is what they're told by other residents of Ukiah and by the staff who work at the front counter at the city hall when they come in to question a bill or pay a bill or complain about a bill, as we have found out in the last 6 to 8 weeks, those folks are then sent to us. And between Chelsea and I, and mostly Chelsea, and the folks across the hall at Millview, and at Willow and Millview, we two, working together, compile the accurate bills. Then Chelsea returns a call to Lori, one of the Loris, right?
Martin, yeah.
At the city, and Lori makes a correction on the bill. Since the new fiscal year started, we have been completely swamped with complaints. Not being familiar with the process until recently, because I've been forced to through these complaints that have come in the door. We've actually gotten down to categorizing why these issues exist, and I can provide the board that report at a different time. But just a great increase of complaints coming in the door in the last 6 weeks. Most of those complaints are one of two issues. Their rate dramatically, and when I say dramatically, and I have people in the room that have personal experience with this, went up between 3 times to 9 times. So when your bill was $60 or $70 a month and now it's in the hundreds, okay, that's what we've been dealing with.
That's obscene.
Well, I just state that because I want you to know what kind of activities we've been involved in here that maybe have not allowed us to get to other activities. So this has consumed our last several weeks of reconciling why all these issues now exist.
When you've researched one of those,
Well,
I mean, their water consumption didn't go up 9 times, right?
it runs the gamut. Maybe Chelsea would be really good for Chelsea to weigh in here, because she is the one, unfortunately, because I'm usually out of the office on a project site or at the firm. Chelsea can actually weigh in on several different of these events that we've been forced to deal with.
So we used one as an example in particular, and it was, I think, 117 Thompson or something. This guy came in and he's really concerned because his sewer bill went up, I think, by like 3 or 4 times. And he was super nice. He came in and he was really worried. So I went across the hall and got his water usage history for like the past 2 years. And I checked over, I took a copy of his bill, look at what he was being charged for residential usage. He was being charged the correct base rate, I'm pretty sure. I have to go grab it, it's in the office. But he was being charged, I think, $198 for residential usage, which is like that's so much water. So when I recalculated his bill, the way it should have been calculated, it was, I mean, dramatically decreased to what it should have been. And another instance, I had a lady come in that had a water bill that was $1,600.
Oh my.
And yeah, and it was only supposed to be around $500 to $600. And I mean, these people come in there with a scared look on their faces, like, why am I getting billed this much? I can't afford it.
So some of them, their water bill's off, so it forces their sewer to be off, but some of them are not getting calculated right, but they're.
Those two in particular, they were not calculated correctly.
Most of, you can slap me in the back of the head here. Most of the corrections we've made with Lori at the city have been a result of miscalculations.
And
So
And currently, those calculations are done by
different people,
the city of Ukiah,
different
the
people.
district.
John Dickerson,
Yes.
the city folks, the Millview, Willow people here. What the process is those databases are all sent to the city. Then that ends the day-to-day administrative involvement of the district. So when we usually find out about something is when somebody got one of those bills.
But if you've got the correct water usage,
Right, so
and
what-
it goes and gets miscalculated,
Right. So what Chelsea's been dealing with is, let's just say a Sand District resident will come in and say, my bill went from, and we have all the numbers.
So, just like I was telling you about 111 Thompson Drive, this guy came in and his bill was, he had a past due amount paid here, so let me calculate what it actually was.
One went from $98 total to $97 and something to $109.
So his bill in the past was $99 and it went up to,
Which is still high, by the way.
right, but that was normal for him. And it went up to $251 and he was concerned. So I emailed Lori for his billing history and I received it. And as you can see here, his charges were $86.47 for a while. They went up to $99 and they jumped to $251. So I pulled his water usage history from Willow Water and I calculated what his water bill should be for this fiscal year based off the 3 months that we used for calculation for billing. And I got $139.27. Yes, that's still high, but it was still miscalculated by $100. And I actually reviewed, in this case specifically, reviewed the spreadsheet that John Dickerson sent to Lori, which she forwarded to me. And everything that he had put in this person's, in this person's address, I guess you can say, all the information, water usage was correct. So it was a miscalculation on behalf of the city.
But did we have had instances where there's different reasons why? And you haven't got to the point yet of being able to see what the consistent factor is.
The reason I put the on the docket tonight for John Dickerson was many-fold. Not only historical, but for me with my own eyes to see why this has trended upward all of a sudden. And let me give you a couple of examples, and I won't mention any names.
Smells fishy to me.
I won't mention any names, but I can tell you that there have been bills outside of the city and inside of the city who come to our desk and to the ladies over here desk because they came across the hall yesterday and asked me for help, what I could do to stop the flow of people coming to their camera. Because remember, we and Millview and Regina and Willow and Lori all share the database, but it goes to the city.
And Lori is Lori?
Billing manager?
She's the
At the
billing-
city, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so what happens is when all that's passed off, Lori takes that data, they enter it into their, I'm assuming they enter it into their database. I don't know how the outside contractors now work with her, but, so what happens is when any of those folks get a bill, like one bill went from 69 something to 570 something.
Oh my
Now,
God.
fortunately for us, that was not a sanitation district resident, that was a city resident. So we just said, sorry you made the trip here, but you gotta go back to the counter, and the comments that she's gotten for weeks now is, well, they sent us here. So until I personally, from my own eyes, can verify why this is happening, I'm just letting you know there's a major issue with billing. I can't say where along the process it's broken down or what the data fix is until I do my own investigation. But it has dramatically increased since the start of the fiscal year, and that may have something to do with it. I don't know.
As a follow-up to that, the city has an ordinance, I think it's 1035, which establishes the manner in which rates are to be charged. And rates are to be charged pursuant to a resolution of the city council. The city has no appeal process. So if somebody has a broken pipe in January and gets a $600 bill, the city is telling those people, too bad, you've got to pay that for a year.
So, not being in the
And
city.
that's not a district customer, that's a city.
Yeah, that's right. Not being in the city, I'm not passing judgment other than the fact that for the first month I was here, we didn't see this. From August 1 to today, even today, right, Chelsea?
It's the new fiscal year, that's what it is.
From today, there's been this skyrocket of foot traffic. And several of you who have been in our office know that without any customers, it's very tough to conduct business there. So you can imagine what it's been like to try to conduct business in that office in the last 6 weeks.
I believe under the city resolution, that's how it works. They do the calculation of water based upon January water use. And the bill change doesn't occur until the first bill after July or.
Well, for us, it's January, February, March.
Right, but the
Yeah,
city's only
cities-
January.
cities only
Okay,
January.
got it. So we've been focusing on that 3-month window for our customers because Chelsea and Lori work really well together, right?
Yeah.
They're on the phone all day because of all these errors. So it's consumed almost 100% of her time.
But I think you should straighten out my bill at my house because I'm a district person.
Bring it on over.
Mine
Buy it down.
Mr. Losak?
And
3 teenagers left.
I just want to point out that there's also the issue of the fact that the city has contracted their billing and collection services out to 3 different companies, one in Southern California and 2 in some other states that I don't remember offhand, one that I think is North Carolina. And I don't believe the district has quite understood what their role is and where any of this is. Is it anything with them, is it with the city itself, or
Well,
we're still looking at some of that?
Yeah, let me continue on with my story here because a lot of that comes up with the relationship between the parties. So I talked about the ratepayers and how what we have learned they don't know about the Sand District. One of the tough things for us to deal with and for the ladies in this office to deal with is the folks who come to our counter aren't just our customers, they're city customers. And so when we call Lori and we say, hey, they said you guys sent them here, we send them back, they're really mad by the time they get back. So somehow we've got to work together and understand what each other's process portion is to fix that because customers are not happy. And it's not just about the rate. Ratepayers are confused as to why they receive their sewer bills from the city when they live outside the city limits. We talk about that with everybody who comes in the office, but that leads us to identifying the need for us to do an outreach program to our customers. Whether it's a mailer, an educational piece, whatever it is we give them that tells them, here's the process. Here's where the bills start, here's where it goes before it gets to your home. So they fully understand if they go to City Hall and they're a Sand District customer, they can probably get their problem solved at the city because we're all working off the database. So to be sent here really ticks them off.
Do we actually know that when they've contracted out to 3 different companies?
Well, I
have no idea where
Well, I have a
how that works.
couple, I
We
have
have 3 contracts, we have copies of 3 contracts.
I have a couple of dozen emails from Lori saying, I've made the adjustment, I've made the adjustment, I've made the adjustment, I've made the adjustment. So she can obviously do it from her station. It's just the pain I feel is all of the folks who just pay their bill.
Right.
They never open, they just go like this and all of a sudden it's, okay. And then they find out, wait a minute, what the heck happened?
But even if it's $20 off though,
I
you
get it.
multiply that over
I
a
get
year or
it.
two.
But these are
That's not
now,
right.
these are now 200 to 400 and 500, and I'm not exaggerating, right? I mean, those numbers are what's happening. So, anyways, if any of you hear about that, believe me, it's a real issue right now for us. It's a real issue for one person to handle this massive swarm of complaints.
And when you say the ladies next door, you're talking about Millview and Willow County water districts, which are not even necessarily part of the city's operation.
Correct, but the sewer is, and the city sends the sewer bill. So even though they're not the water, they still come here. Yeah. So I'm just saying, there's a breakdown in the relationship communication, not with Lori and Chelsea. They've solved countless problems for people in the last 2 weeks. The workload's been phenomenal.
Chelsea, did you have something to say? Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna add to when you get those emails that say the account for blah, blah, blah address has been changed or adjusted, it's because I have to fill out this form. It has like our UBSD logo and it's called authorization for a customer account change or something similar to that. And I have to fill out what they're currently being billed, the base rate plus however many units, and I have to fill it out in a residential, like a little residential table, or if they're in commercial, I fill it out there. And then I have to give a little description as to why the account's being changed. So when it came to these accounts, and accounts similar to this, where it wasn't me emailing her with that authorization form saying it's being changed because there was a major leak, or there was a minor leak, or so on, I just ended up calling her and saying, if I get issues like this, I'm not filling that out, I'm gonna send those people to you. Because what we've sent you is correct. So there's no authorization account changes for these people because it wasn't a mistake on our behalf or a leak that occurred at the service location.
So again, I'm doing my own investigation because we have a finger in the pie with a person who provides data to the city, and that's John Dickerson. And so, I think it was Monday, Chelsea, or Tuesday, we're gonna end up going through about 3,100 accounts. Because there's no other way to do it.
You have to.
There's no other way to do it. We've run formulas to see if there's mistakes or not, but you gotta go through it. So anyways, that starts next week. The residents who do come in and have a complaint about their bill that gets corrected are asking questions like, okay, we've heard about the lawsuit, what's happened to the revenues, what plans lie ahead, what are we gonna do with the money, all those type of things.
I wonder, do they see that this increase in the rates as a result of the lawsuit? Has that ever come up?
No.
Okay.
What's come up is they noticed it when the budget year started,
Okay.
August 1. So not being privy to the budget, that's what we see.
Mhm.
So, I'll make a comment on the relationship with the city staff. It's professional. Chelsea and the city billing staff work well together to address these issues. I had an initial meeting with the city manager. I believe the meeting was productive and cordial, although expectedly, we see things from a different perspective, based on his history here and my non-history here. So that, I expected that going in. I don't believe there's any issues that we couldn't solve working together, but we've got to drop the positions of where we come from and just say, let's work off of facts. And let's just move down the road and solve these issues. And until we get to that point, I don't know if that's going to occur. So my challenge right now is to continue to look at the facts of how we operate, learn as much as I can about how the city operates, including the billing, and then make recommendations where I can to him, and he can educate me on how things happen with the city on their side. But I thought it was a productive first meeting, although we agreed to disagree on a lot of historical stuff that we brought up here tonight. Because I simply wasn't here. I can't weigh in on that. So anyways, that was my description of how we're working with the city staff. The existing litigation has caused strange relationships, again expected due to the mere fact that each of the staffs work for elected and appointed officials who have negative history and differing opinions of how both sides got here and why. That's not going to change tomorrow. The district has not completed various required administrative management tasks for a number of years. The reason we haven't is, and this is stated, by the way, in an audit report of 2007, which I think Chairman Ronco remembered, because you named the date, which blew my mind. But in 2007, we had an audit done by a company called R.J. Ricciardi, who at the end of 2007 opined in their report that they cannot form an opinion based on the invalid data that they can't verify from the city. Well, that was when we were all under the city. It's only deteriorated from there. So I've talked to CPAs, I've talked to audit people. They could not come in today and perform an audit of the sanitation district because they cannot, they have no verifiable data to base it on. So I'm just letting you know that when the board gave me authorization to move forward with cleanup of the audits and the budgets and all that, we're just getting started with that. I got a little sidetracked with this wave of stuff here, but the fact is that because the data has not been available to the sanitation district, and as Mr. James has said a couple times tonight, folks from his team have found, some of the data. But the fact is that even if we had auditors available in the last few years, they could not have opined of the validity of those facts.
Isn't that something we should get in writing though, in lieu of an audit? Or
Well, that's-
at least have our administrative budget audited,
Yes,
so
and
that
that's
we show
why,
good faith in that?
and that's why I asked for the action on Mr. Dickerson, because a lot of that data he's got. So I want to put him together with a transition period with a CPA and say, here's what I'm handing you, please.
This is what we have.
Right. So that's where I'm starting. But I had to go back in time to find out that that issue existed for 10 years now, 2007. So it's been 10 years since that opinion said we don't have the valid data to give you an opinion.
I believe in the last audit report that was done, it is qualified by the accountant, the CPA, as not getting the right information in order to conduct a complete audit. And she put some very protection language, it's nothing else. The audit is nothing more than an accumulation of numbers. It isn't an audit as normally is conducted. Since then, I don't think there's been.
I'm trying to see if I can find that exact language so you guys know what I'm actually reading from. Yeah, here we go.
Just before we formed the ad hoc committee.
A couple other items. Since the audit report was written, under the organization of the city, as I mentioned, communications and relationships between the two parties, as you all know, has deteriorated, so facts became even more hard to prove. Until we fix that relationship between the technical folks to provide the valid data, I can go ahead and hire a CPA and I can hire Dickerson, but again, we're going to be fighting that challenge all the way down. So don't expect a rapid fix to that, but we're working on it. I contacted, when I first got here, the state controller, the state auditor. Doug walked me over and introduced me to the county auditor to notify them I had come here and I was intending to clean up after years of not conforming with these government regulations. So they appreciated that contact, they appreciated the visit. They basically said keep them apprised of our progress, so after this meeting, I'll start that again tomorrow with them and basically tell them what we're doing with board actions and here's where we're going. So anyways, that's an update there. We're still going through, and I'll not exaggerate again here, we're still going through thousands of old emails and hard copies of documents. Appreciate Doug's work helping find a lot of the old ones, and of course Chelsea for filing everything that we've so far found to help bring us up to compliance with some things that just weren't handled. As I mentioned, office space continues to hamper the operation, especially as we've been going through this. I just haven't had time to do searching because of the workload here. Many of our existing IT problems have been band-aided for now. We won't talk full replacement or any of the update computers until we actually decide, are we gonna move, are we gonna stay, or, all of that stuff, so. There has been sufficient ransomware, malware, and cybersecurity put on the machines as they exist, but again, these are dated machines, and they've been breached before, so I just put that out there for an update. My last update is paperwork was completed by me, saving time to open our new UVSD business account. I informed Chairman Ronco, so he and Director McMillan can go over, hopefully as soon as possible now, and sign the signature cards. And we got a new account, because November 7th, Bank of America ceases to exist.
So tomorrow I can stop by there.
It's up to you guys now. It's
We
Sandy.
can go separately.
You go see
Yeah,
Sandy,
it's not
Sandy at New Accounts, Sandi. Blonde hair, she opened our account, took all the paperwork, part of it was an incorporation, which Doug, thank you for helping me find all the tax ID numbers, which nobody could tell me where they were. So we finally got all that stuff done, and you would not believe what your original article of incorporation says. It's one page. It's about the color of Duncan's sheet right in front of me. It used to be white. And it's in typewriter that you can read mostly from 1955.
You know why they were so short? They were typewriters, not
Hand.
computers.
That's
right. They talk a lot.
And it was Board of Supervisors at the time, the
Yeah.
names, and they were typed in, and it said, knock yourself out. That's basically what it said. So that's my update, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So at this point, then, I guess that concludes your general manager's report and ongoing district activities. Ms. McFarland.
Thank you, Director McFarland. I have a suggestion that when we discuss refunding the ratepayers, that maybe we could do that jointly with the outreach to save on any possible postage costs, or just occurred to me. So if we could,
One of the things we've talked about as a possibility is doing it by coupon. In the hometown shopper, because it hits every single household. And that way the person would have a form to complete and present to you copies of bills, which would substantiate their claim. Plus it would give us all the detail on name, address, account number, et cetera, so you have the right verifiable information.
I don't know if I should say this publicly, but I get that hometown shopper and I recycle it pretty quick before I read through it. So I don't know. That's a mess. I would just be throwing $100 away.
I think that part of the reason that may make some sense is because at this point, I still don't believe we have what we believe to be a reliable customer list.
Also, along that same line of discussion that Duncan was having with Director McMillan, and that is, there is another shopper type service in town that also offers the small postcard size mailers to the home, every home, and you simply put your information requested on it, and it's self-addressed stamp, and they just put it in the mailbox and it comes back to us.
I mean, because if real estate agents can afford to send me postcards, can't we afford to send our ratepayers? Come on. It's just,
I think those are the.
I don't want my refund to rely on the hometown
The idea being to do the outreach simultaneously as would allow with the rebate is an excellent opportunity to get information out there.
Thank you.
And if it costs a little bit more to actually send something regular mail, we'll save because we were talking about two different items and now we'll get it all done in one.
Right.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything else to add to the district manager's report?
I told you that I would find the language, just so you know exactly what the auditor said, and I'll read this to you now. This was July 31st, last day of the fiscal year 2007. So Mr. Ronco, hats off to you because you had the date right. Detailed records have not been maintained and certain records and supporting data were not available for our audit. Now, this was when the district was part of the city organization. Therefore, we were not able to satisfy ourselves about the amounts at which investments in joint venture with the city of Ukiah and the amounts at which property, plant, and equipment and related accumulated depreciation was recorded in the accompanying balance sheet as of June 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, and 2005. In addition, certain inquiries regarding account balances and other matters have not been resolved. Because of the significance of the matters discussed in the preceding paragraph, the scope of our work was not sufficient to enable us to express, and we do not express, an opinion of the financial statements. I don't know, I probably worded it not as well as he did, but anyways, that was what I was trying to describe to you back when we did our last, attempt. I think, Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, we did an audit in about 2009, but it was based on the same type of...
It had the same type of provision in it, the exculpatory language saying, this is all we can get.
We can't qualify, yeah.
Right, we can't qualify or verify this. And I just want to clarify, the district was never part of the city. It was when a district was a dependent board, had a dependent board before it went independent.
Right.
That's what we have now.
So anyways, that's what the status was then, and it's gone this way since then. And that's what makes it so tough for us to reconcile, especially with her and Lori and,
We know that. I've known that for a long time.
Well, I guess that leads us to this final moment where we set the next date for the next general meeting, which I believe would be October 19th at 5:30. And that having been said,
I have a question for Duncan. Duncan, are you gonna meet with any other mediation or anything between now and then?
We're waiting for the judge to complete the case that he's in. That's what's holding us up right now. It's not the city, it's nobody, it's the judge. We've spent a lot of time with that judge, and although we could go and try to get another mediator to complete it, it would be a real waste of time. And
No, my point was between now and, you said October 19th? Was that the date?
that's our regular meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this,
So the answer
he
is
said he didn't know, the case he's in, it's the fourth phase, I think, of a trial. So it's been going on for very extended periods of time. And I said, well, Judge, you know as well as I do, 99.9% of the case is finished. And he said, these lawyers are pretty stubborn. I don't know if these guys are going to stop. He said it's going to be 6 weeks. And he started it probably from his vacation schedule last week. And so figure 6 weeks out, we're talking about mid-October. And as soon as he's free, then he will give us an available date to immediately go back in. Because there's not a lot we have to do additionally to get back in there. I mean, a lot of work's been done since August 14th.
okay. But
And
we're
that's
not
what I want to
stopping.
remind you, is that even though we aren't having an official mediation with the mediator, the attorneys are meeting and discussing things with different people to help this keep
Resolve.
going.
Correct.
To resolve and move on.
And it's all considered within the mediation privilege, which means we can't discuss it. We can talk about, yes, we've gone to mediation, and if the settlement on something is reached and you come out and make public, that's okay. But we can't tell you in public session.
But of course, it's continuing to move forward.
And there was an agreement that the judge suggested on how to proceed in his absence.
Yes, and that's exactly what we're doing. Correct. The city and the district.
So you said October 19th?
October 19th, meeting adjourned.
So,